Good morning or good afternoon. This is section 6.4, factoring polynomials. We're going to use the factor theorem to determine factors of a polynomial, and we're going to factor the sum and difference of two cubes. We're also going to do some other factoring with polynomials based on some other rules that y'all have done before. Hopefully y'all remember those. If not, go back to other notes to pull those up. The main thing we want to get here on this one is we're going to do the factor theorem. Okay, the factor theorem states that basically if you have like any factor, any binomial factor, if it divides evenly into the polynomial, then it's a factor of it. Okay, so like in the example that we're saying here, and we're going to do this through synthetic substitution. The example that we're going to work with here says that is x minus 3 a factor of x squared plus 2x minus 3. Okay, so we set up our synthetic division. So the minus 3 again would be plus 3 or positive 3 because we're setting that equal to 0. We go through the steps, bring down the 1. 1 times 3 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 15, 15 minus 3 is 12. Since the remainder is a number other than 0, then x minus 3 is not a factor. The answer, if this had been a 0, if the remainder had been a 0, then we would have said yes, it's a factor. And we'll see more about that in a little bit later. Okay, so since p of 3 is equal to 12, since it's not equal to 0, x minus 3 is not a factor. Okay, let's do one that I think has an answer as a factor. So x plus 4, is that a factor? Would it divide evenly into 2x to the 4th plus 8x cubed plus 2x plus 8? Now keep in mind, as we're working this, we're saying that we have an x to the 4th, so that's a 2, then the 8, then a 0 because we're missing the x squared, then a 2, and then an 8. So you can see how we're going through this, and we get an answer of 0. Brought down the 2, negative 4 times 2 was negative 8, 8 minus 8 is 0, 0 times negative 4 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, negative 4 times 0 is 0, 2 plus 0 is 2, 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, 8 minus 8 is 0. Okay. The key is, since the remainder is 0, or we have no remainder, that means it divides evenly, which means it's a factor. So x plus 4 is considered a factor of 2x to the 4th plus 8x cubed plus 2x plus 8. Okay, so that covers like the factor theorem. All you got to do is divide evenly or use the synthetic division and see basically if you end up with a remainder of 0. Okay, so now let's look at factor by grouping. And in factor by grouping, we're trying to take, say, a 4-term polynomial, and we're trying to look at, say, the first 2 by themselves. We're going to put them in parentheses, and we're going to put the second 2 in parentheses. Now, if you look at the first 2, you got x cubed and 3x squared. What can you factor out of those? What can be taken? What do they both have in common? Well, they both have an x squared in common. So you take out an x squared. And you're left with, if you take out 2 x's from 3, you're left with 1x. If you take out 2 x's from 3x squared, you're left with just the 3. Okay. The way factor by grouping works, whatever's in the first parentheses there should end up in a second parentheses for the second group of parentheses. So I'm going to write x plus 3 here. That means whatever I'm taking out of this negative 4x minus 12 should leave me with an x plus 3 also. So what we can do, you should be able to tell, okay, negative 4 will go into both of them, and I can write negative 4 here. But since you know these two have to be the same, then what you can do is this. What is negative 12 divided by 3? Negative 12, because I've already written that. You notice I wrote the x plus 3 first. Negative 12 divided by 3 gives me negative 4. Now, to keep going, we're going to put the parentheses that repeats as the first parentheses, x plus 3, and the two terms that are outside of both parentheses together in another parentheses, x squared minus 4. Hopefully that's all you got to do and you're done. But in this case, we can factor x squared minus 4 further. A lot of times when you're doing these, this one right here, the second parentheses, if it's x squared minus a perfect square, it can be factored a little further. What's the square root of 4? 2, so I can say x plus 2, x minus 2. And also the x plus 3 that was at the beginning. Okay, I will do another example with that one. X squared, or x cubed minus 2x squared minus 9x plus 18. Okay, again, I'm going to put the first two and the last two in parentheses. I can take out an x squared, be left with an x minus 2. That means I need to write x minus 2 again. And then, like I said, from here, notice how these two repeat. Now, if I wanted to figure out what should go in that middle space, well, what's 18 divided by negative 2? 18 divided by negative 2 is negative 9, and there I go. So now I'll write x minus 2, parentheses x squared minus 9. Since that's a minus 9, I can factor that further and say that's x plus 3, x minus 3. If it had been plus 9, I wouldn't have been able to do anything else. If it had been, say, minus 10, I wouldn't have been able to do anything else because, again, we're only doing those if they are perfect squares. So like 4, 9, 16, 25, like that. Okay, so now we're going to do factoring the sum and differences of two cubes. And actually there's two formulas here that you should copy, pause and copy, because that's really the best thing to do. Notice is that if it's a cubed plus b cubed, you've got one formula that's just, and the a cubed minus b cubed is a slightly different formula, but not very different. Okay, so let's look at an example. Okay, I've got here 8y cubed minus 27. And then I want you to see here that I've rewritten that to make you see that 8y cubed is like saying 2y to the third power, because 2 to the third power, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 27 is like 3 to the third power. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So it is helpful to know your cubes, and it might be helpful to have them written on your note card for the test. So if that's the case, then this right here, the 2y is A, 3 is B. And if I plug them in based on the formula, I'm going to have 2y minus 3 in the first parentheses. Then in the second parentheses, I'm going to say 2y squared, which 2 squared is 4. So 4y squared minus, it's supposed to be a times b. So 3 times 2, I'm sorry, actually plus, 3 times 2 is 6. Y, and then 3 squared, which is 9. The pluses and minuses are based off the formula themselves, so keep that in mind and just work it from there. And that's it. You cannot do anything further with that problem. So one more example. 5x to the fourth plus 40x. Oh, wait, I don't see cubes here because 5 is a prime number. Well, you see if you can factor something out. Here, both 40 and 5 are divisible by 5, and I have an x in both, so I'll take out an x. That would leave me with x to the third power plus 8. And that becomes my, that's a sum of two cubes. The a is the x, and the 8 is a 2 to the third power. So then on the outside I have 5x, but in the first parentheses I'm going to have x plus 2, and in the second parentheses it will be x squared minus 2x plus 2 squared, which is 4. And you're done. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. You can ask on Thursday during the test review or Wednesday during class when you're working on the assignment. This is one of those that the more you practice with it, again, the easier it gets, so you need to make sure you're doing as much as you can. Thank you so much for your time, and that's it for this one.